When the not provided keywords started growing in Google Analytics, things started to get really, really grim. And it was petrifying, actually, for a lot of SEOs. Wait, don't take my keywords away. SEOs found a way through the problem and persevered. Then, as one dark cloud passes, another follows. And now we have dark search. We've got dark social. And these topics have been in discussion since late last year. And now we're seeing the increasing effects. Well, are we facing the data depression? I don't think it's data depression. It's just going to be a different way to actually go after this. So we're talking about the dark side, and no reference to our guest here. We're talking to Marshall Simmonds of Define Media Group and his take on dark search, social and mobile. So Marshall, thank you so much for joining us, and we appreciate you jumping on board with our news as well. So I'd like to introduce Marshall Simmonds to the Edge audience here. Marshall was actually responsible for building About.com into the most successful content network on the internet. Acquired in March 2005 by the New York Times, he was named Chief Search Strategist and was responsible for many of the initiatives, maximizing traffic and search engine exposure for the New York Times, Boston.com, HIT.com, and About.com. During his time at the New York Times, he grew search referrals over 25% of total traffic. That's a nice resume there, Marshall. Can you give us a little bit more about your history?
Yeah, I hate bios. I always get so weirded out when people are reading my bios, and yet my wife, who's in PR, just says you got to do it. But I just crawl for some
She
reason.
texted me earlier. I had to do this. I'm sorry.
Way too self-aggrandizing. But so Define Media Group was born actually in the New York Times, and so part of me joining the company there was that I could start my own. I was going to go off on my own. They said, hey, come in and do this for the New York Times, and we'll help you incubate it. So we did. And it was actually really successful. There's a big need as publishing really started to wake up. Old school publishing, as we know it, really started to wake up in 2005, and so we got on board with that and started Define Media Group, where we are 6 senior level guys that have been doing search and audience development in some capacity, managing big P&Ls in-house gigs for a long time. And so we're a distributed workforce. We work with some of the largest publishers in the world and have touched a majority, if not all, the big major blue chip publishers. And that is, we've also worked in e-commerce. We also work in the consulting space, or excuse me, in the private equity and investment space, helping to manage some of these larger acquisitions that you may be seeing will be coming in, and we help do basic due diligence around potential acquisition targets, and so a lot of that is involved with the investment community, and so that's kind of been our history. We've all been doing this for a long time. I've been in search since 1997. I'm coming up on my 20th anniversary into this crazy space.
Absolutely.
And so that's my background in a nutshell. We work heavily with editorial teams. We work heavily with development product teams.
Hey, Marshall, this is Doug Carr. I wanted to just, throw some kudos out to you. We did a huge hierarchy and taxonomy project for a client that had, tens of millions of pages. And About.com was one of the sites that we did, excruciating analysis on taxonomy and hierarchy, and because it was just so well done.
Yeah, and it's funny because when we set that up, subdomains was the way, right? That was the way to do it. And this was in 2000 when we were going through an architectural redesign. And that was my opening salvo working with About. It's like, hey, they're treating these all as individual sites. Let's do that. And so that worked really well for About, because About braved that 2001 collapse. Yeah. And was one of the shining stars to come out of that. And so it was because of search traffic that company and that site survived. There's a lot of really smart people. I'm certainly not saying that it was all SEO and all me by any means. I'm saying that there was people there that had the foresight to see that was probably where we needed to hitch our wagon, brought me in, and then they gave me a blank slate and said, let's do whatever it takes. And to their credit, they were very agile for having an 800 guide site over almost 2 million pages. Oh, wow. They were very agile and would quickly move on anything that we saw as an opportunity.
Nice. And that does, it does at least beg the point that you have been privy to scenarios that a lot of SEO firms and individual professionals haven't been privy to. I mean, this is big data, and this is a lot of structure, and I mean, you have to put together your models correctly. But I mean, you've been able to kind of see over the hedge of a lot of scenarios where you can truly shake 25%, 35% of organic out of this type of restructuring, where there's it's a challenge for smaller sites, smaller structure. You don't have that wallop of feedback,
or it just takes a lot longer
Absolutely.
to kind of get that curve.
Yeah, we do like the big data. We compile the big data from all of our resources. We monitor about 335 billion total page views. We're looking at monthly. We're looking at over 300 to 500 million search visits every month. And so we like to look at it. We kind of, it's kind of akin to sitting in the control tower and watching the internet do its thing. We can see the tremors, and we can see this information happen, and that's where the dark search aspect really started to come to light, so to speak. That was a really ridiculous pun. That was not intended at all.
Yes.
Geez.
It's infectious, isn't it?
That's where we really started to get exposed to it, and because a lot of us just see, if you don't mind the segue into the topic right now,
absolutely.
I mean that's kind of where we all have seen this dark bucket. We all see that direct traffic that's sitting in GA. We see it there. We see it in Omniture, and we've all kind of just accepted it. We see it there.
It's the price of doing business. You have to have that. You just don't. You can't pierce that veil.
And we've always just kind of we know the knee-jerk response is, oh, that's bookmarks and direct traffic.
Right.
That's people typing in URLs. And I was just as guilty of saying that. And then we started to see some things happening. And this was in 2013. We started to see direct grow at the same time search traffic on a whole started to decline.
Exactly.
And that was where we first started, like, oh, why is search traffic declining on a whole in 2013? And then we went in there and looked, and somebody said, well, shit, direct is increasing. And that became very interesting to us. And so we started to watch direct increase into 2014, and then it plateaued, and then it started to creep up again in 2015. Now, it has changed in the sense that it's not a zero sum at this point. So search is still increasing now.
Right.
Some things have been corrected, but we have continued to see this dark traffic bucket increase. And if it increases, that means that we are not getting credit for our work.
Absolutely.
In a nutshell.
Absolutely, and that was to push a pause right there. That was one of the most the strongest points of resonance whenever the not provided came through on keywords coming into GA, is because that's the litmus test, and that's the proof positive that the SEOs were doing the right thing by having that confirmation of growth in keywords and organic. Now it's slipping into the dark, so to speak, and there's a whole other area of analysis that you have to do.
Are you saying Google made a change so that people couldn't game the system? Is that what you're saying?
It was done correctly for those black hat people, but at the same time, the white hat SEOs got slapped along the same way. You know?
Yeah.
Excellent. I didn't keep on going, Marshall. I mean, this is
there's
fantastic.
a lot of nuance to this, and so we started looking at this. And look, let's take a step back in the sense that when we're talking about dark traffic, we've got to acknowledge the fact that there's a lot of misinformation out there. And part of what we have to do as audience development people and people that are involved with SEO, we have to translate, and we have to be the evangelists. And so when these changes come out, or when these reports come out, we have to go in there, and we're the first on the scene, and we have to be able to analyze it and give feedback. Not provided would be the biggest one.
Sure.
That was the biggest ripple. So we don't need to discuss that at length, because that's our new reality. Not new, but that's our reality. We've adapted. But there are a lot of other things that continue. There's a lot of other there's a lot of other new initiatives in the news, or new projects or new launches that we have to continue to scramble, and then assimilate as much data and intel as we can on something, and then pick a direction, a strategic direction. A lot of that would be, ComScore issues monthly reports that show Google is not the strongest search engine, or excuse me, that it doesn't have as much market share as everybody says it does.
Right.
We see people saying SEO is dead. We see this information about that Google puts out that says if you move to HTTPS, you'll see a ranking boost.
All right.
This kind of information, and then even just recently, Google will say has talked about Mobilegeddon. I mean, that was a pretty big deal, where last year they said if you are not a mobile-friendly site, you are going to see a decrease in ranking.
And there's a very expensive change as well, because there was a huge, if you're a web developer, all of a sudden, web development shop, there was a huge cornucopia of a new business there. But that's the responsibility of Google, is that they can truly affect so much in the digital marketing economy. And you're absolutely right with the Mobilegeddon, and it's still trailing. And I don't really think. We've seen a number of data points, and it was not nearly as strong as what it was led on to be.
And that's why we say it's misinformation. Now, I'm not saying Google does not have the right intention. I think they do. They just have the wrong delivery, and they're trying to pull the puppet strings, quite frankly.
Right.
And this is not tinfoil hat crap. We've seen it happen now.
Yep.
And this is me being the senior in the class, and
Absolutely.
That is to say that this is me talking to everybody out there that's responsible for audience development and SEO work. When Google issues an edict, I implore you to take a breath. To take a breath.
Absolutely.
We call it the Zen breath. Take the Zen breath and just look around and say, what will this do? Mm-hmm. What does Google benefit from this? And then, is it really as critical as they say it is for us as an organization? Because you can probably look at something. So when HTTPS came out, SEOs lost their freaking mind.
Yes, they did.
We got to go secure. Again, it's for the right reason. They just presented it incorrectly.
Well, they're leading us by the nose, and the sheer fact is, and we have a case in point of speed. 7 years ago, they were saying that speed has nothing to do with it, although the hints kept coming along the way until eventually this year, they're completely owning that space. Now, we knew that speed was a factor. They were saying, no, it wasn't. For a long period of time, there was just this gap of intel, right?
That's right.
Well,
that's right.
One of the things that you said, and I want to chime in just because I wrote an article once called "SEO is Dead."
Thank you for that.
But I obviously that was clickbait, and once I got into the article, what I was talking about was the black hatting and gaming of the system.
Right.
That's what Google killed. But one of the things that I really like about what you're saying, Marshall, is I often tell our clients that, look, if you just focused on content and quit trying to chase this ball that Google keeps running with, just focus on the quality of your content. If they put half the effort in the quality of the content that they did in chasing everything that, Google says,
it's whack-a-mole.
They would be in much better shape.
To summarize, Google said to isn't a reliable strategy.
Oh, no. Wait a minute. I've got a business card holder that says because Google said so. No!
and it's not a reliable strategy. I'll say.
Okay,
there's an operative word there. It's not a reliable strategy. Case in point being that Mobilegeddon. So everybody goes out and we got to get responsive, we got to get mobile friendly, we got to get speed for the right reasons. Because Google's like, come on,
exactly,
you guys.
For the right reasons. Yeah.
This is you're slowing everything down. User experience, your engagement, you're not paying attention to engagement metrics, all the right reasons, and the smart SEOs have been screaming this from on high. So on the one hand, I love it when Panda comes out. I love it when Google says this kind of stuff because, again, that's one thing, it's job security for all of us because we get to translate it. But number two, because we get to say, yes, this is what we've been saying for a long time. Thin content, you're putting out content, you're on an assembly line of content, not a good strategy.
Absolutely.
And so, but the other case in point is that Mobilegeddon. So everybody scrambles to get their sites mobile friendly, and then what happens a year later? AMP.
Right.
And AMP is completely different than the mobile strategy. And so you see what's happening within Google. The mobile team is like, really? We're going to go all in on AMP? Because we've been telling everybody this, that you need to be focused on speed and site design and all this. AMP is like, no, we're going to take care of it for you. And obviously that was a knee-jerk response or a strategic response to Facebook's instant articles. I get that, but Google has gone all in on AMP. That is very clear at this point. If you're paying attention, they have put a concerted amount of effort into it. I suspect with Google I/O, they're going to talk more about it at Google I/O. I think that we see it just happen with Google News. Last week it released. Now I'm not saying that it won't be different a year from now. But at the same time, when Google says something, step back and take a breath, because we've tracked the data and we've looked at all of our sites, these billions and billions of sessions, and we know that responsive design sites, sure, they saw an increase.
Right.
We saw MDOT. Sure, there was some increase. But guess what? We also saw sites that put no time into mobile, saw an increase. And that's not, we've got the data, we see it. So Google saying that you're going to see an increase or a decrease because you are not this or you are that is not a reliable strategy. We have the data that shows us that consistently.
It's context, but at the same time, you can't be led by the nose.
That's right. So it's about taking a step back and collectively looking at, does this fit? Does this make sense? What does Google have to benefit from it? And just because they say so doesn't mean you should. And it's always good to sit back and let other people run it down, frankly, and then start to report back, because we know that going secure is the right thing to do, but it's not for a ranking boost. We know that mobile design not going to boost site traffic, but it is going to increase engagement, and it's for the right reasons.
I think I have a new hero, and my hero is Marshall Simmonds. That's fantastic.
I don't know the response to that, but thank you.
and we have his phone number, so even better.
Watch out for those late night texts from Doug Carr.
There we go. Well, let's go back over to that was a fantastic perspective. Let's go back over to dark search and kind of unpacking that dark search description, so we can kind of convey that to the listeners here.
Right. So as we started to look in this bucket, so as I get off the rant around misinformation, because that is a big one, because there's a lot of darkness happening in there. This direct traffic bucket, when you log in, most people see that in the dashboard. You see organic search, you see social, and you see direct. And a lot of us have said, and that's the same thing. I think Omniture calls it type bookmarks, for example.
Right.
That is your analytics program saying your traffic, the traffic that just came in, has no referral string. We don't know where it came from. There's nothing to indicate that it came from a site, a search engine, a domain. We don't know what it is.
Right.
And so if we don't know what it is, if we can't classify it, we're going to throw it in this bucket. And that bucket happens to be labeled direct. And that is a catch-all for all kinds of crap.
Love it.
And crap meaning confusing crap meaning things that shouldn't be in there. And when we started to unpack that bucket, we found some very interesting trends that started to develop. It wasn't hard to figure out either. And it didn't take a lot of heavy lifting. It just depends on the size of the bucket, obviously. But that's where that direct moniker comes from, and that's the history of it, so to speak.
One example that I could think right off the top of my head, and I've been told that it's been corrected, but it was social apps.
Yep. That
basically social apps didn't put a header request, in when you opened up a web page, and so it just came direct, as if someone typed into the browser.
Yep.
Exactly.
And apps are absolutely one of the biggest instigators. Maybe not instigators is the right word, but they're certainly one of the biggest offenders when it comes to this. Because again, if you think about new apps, their goal is adoption, right? They want to get people onboarded as quickly as possible and keep them engaged. So onboarding, retention, and then user experience.
Yep.
Their goal isn't necessarily to give you that data, to give marketers data. We are not the priority. That is not the priority. But, I mean, we can even argue that Facebook just recently started paying attention to it within the last 24 months. I mean, Facebook Insights was not that good for a very long time. And that said, when a new app comes out, the tracking around that is going to be immediately obscured. And the biggest one is WhatsApp. WhatsApp is the fastest growing social channel out there. There's 900 million. This was as of September, but 900 million users. They're coming up on a billion users. They're sending 50 billion messages a day. So, and guess what? There's no tracking on that. So if you send me a link like, hey, I just read this article, go read it, I click through on it, that goes into the bucket. That goes into the direct bucket that anybody who's done some social, that has done work in social is going to say, I'm not getting credit for my work.
Yep, there you go. Well, I mean, there's these three areas to look at: the dark search, dark mobile, and dark social.
Yeah.
Do me a favor here. Can I go and tie off this segment, and then can we have you over on one more segment, sir?
Sure, absolutely.
Fantastic. Yep. All right, coming up, we're going to be talking again to Marshall about dark data. Coming up right after this, Marshall, we've got three pinatas to hit. One of them is the dark search side of things.
Yeah.
Can you unpack that a little bit for us?
So when we dug into that direct bucket, we found a lot of fuzziness, a lot of data that we couldn't quantify. And so we had to find a methodology to say, all right, how much of this are we leaving on the table? How much of our work from SEO, from search, and even from social are we leaving on the table? Right. Social, as it turns out, is pretty easy. So we'll get to that in a second. Sure. But search is a little bit harder. Now, I'm the first one to say that, look, I would love to say I'm going to add 10% more search traffic based on what I'm finding in the direct bucket. That's not going to happen. A majority of what you're going to find in this direct bucket could probably be attributed to social or sharing.
Right.
And I want to be very clear, those are very different tools, or very different platforms, I would say, or processes even. Sharing is IM, is email, is all of these various ways, like the WhatsApp, like I was talking about before, Slack.
Right.
Social is things that are actively promoting, I would say, the Twitters of the world, et cetera. But when we started to get in there, we saw. We said we have to try to figure out what methodology. So we took that bucket. We just basically downloaded all the URLs that were in that search bucket, or excuse me, that direct bucket. And then what we did was we said, okay, we're going to remove the page, the home page, and the section fronts. Because somebody could type in nytimes.com/movies. I do, because I'm directly navigating. So that's where direct navigation truly happens.
That's the purest perspective right there. That's exactly what they intended for that label, right?
Yeah, right. And so we want to take a very conservative approach on this. And so what was left after you pull those out, all the sessions around that, and all the crap that, because there's a lot of, there's a lot of tracking code there that sometimes isn't stripped out. There's a lot of things in there that basically cleans up the corpus somewhat. Right. But what's left there, we can arguably say, is the social and search traffic, the effort around that. So what we have to do to get to search is we have to then go to the social team and say, you got to give me every URL that you guys have promoted, or the tracking code that you guys have promoted, and for the last month, we'll say. And send me any URL that you have done this promotion around, and let me scrub this list, this bucket, this leftover corpus. Okay. Let me scrub that out. So we got that list, and we scrubbed it out. Anything that was promoted in social at any point in time, we grabbed and we pulled that out. And what was left, we are saying, for the most part, what's left from that is search traffic. Now, there's got to be some nuance to that. This is as deep as we've gotten. And so I encourage people to pick this apart and show how we can dig into this further. But what's left there is not just a bunch of crumbs at this point. There's a lot of traffic in there. There's 2% of traffic that we found kind of on average. There's about 2% left over that we can say, like, holy crap, that is actual search traffic, and that's credit that I want. That's
Absolutely.
work that we've done.
Now, does HTTPS actually fall into this bucket as well sometimes?
To answer, so in a nutshell, yes. Secure search is not helping anything, right?
No.
Especially if I'm a secure site, and especially if an insecure, I don't know if is that the right way to say it, a non-secure site is pointing to me. I am not going to necessarily see it. Or, let me switch that around. Sorry. If I am a secure site,
right,
and I am linking to a non-secure site, that non-secure site is not going to see where it came from. And so
because
that's why
it's
it's
not passing
incumbent
any
upon
information.
Yeah, that's right. We're not passing any information. That's why it's incumbent upon me. If I'm a secure site, it's incumbent upon all SEOs to make sure that you look at that referrer tag. That is really important.
Right.
And so you have to, as a secure site, you need to look at that meta referrer tag. The meta referrer tag is a very important element to this.
And can you actually expand on the meta referrer tag, because this seems to be an incumbent practice on professionals, and you're asking the web world to actually adopt this. Not you personally are asking, but I mean that's what is necessary to actually kind of heal our referrer gap, right?
That's right. If you want credit for your work as a secure site, and you can be a small site that's secured, you can be, 100 million pages site that is secure. Mm-hmm. The difference being that if, again, you want credit for your work, if you are engaged in in any kind of syndication deal or any kind of business arrangement where you want to get essentially where it's important that these sites see your traffic source as a referrer.
Yep.
It's really important that this tag be implemented across the site. It's useful for sites to be able to show how much traffic they send. You're also being a good web citizen in general. But it's really important for small and medium businesses, B2B guys, people that are B2B sites where it better helps them to define their value and basically quantify that revenue or any type of value that you are sending to a site that is going to be obscured if you are a secure site and don't have this tag implemented.
Understood. So, I mean, this is simply a tag. I mean, there's some dimensions to what you can put into that referrer tag.
Yeah.
But
there's a great site on it or it's a great article that Cyrus Shepard did over on the Moz blog. And that I always reference because it's kind of the Bible when it comes to the meta referrer tag, that if you want more information about it, you should consider that, because again, you are then dark if you are a secure site pointing to a non-secure site or pushing traffic or affiliate.
And see, and that's a twofold thing. Google pushed us to HTTPS. They're proclaiming that loudly, but they're not dovetailing it with how they want you to actually be that good web citizen for data. So, I mean, they're asking you to do one thing, but if you're not following the course of events in the industry, you don't have that additional reference point. So that's a very good point right there, is to be able to fully understand the context in which you're working. With the remaining time that we have here, can you talk briefly about dark mobile and dark search? I know that, dark social.
Yeah. So and we've touched on it quite a bit. That is to say that a majority of that direct bucket is going to be social. Right. If you're in a larger organization, if you're an enterprise level site, get ready for a battle, because social is going to come in with a big machete saying, hey, don't even think about it. A majority of that is our traffic. And I would say for the most part, they're probably right, but that doesn't mean that you can't go in there and see when did you release certain content.
Right.
If you know the rollout schedule
or
the content release date of certain time, or certain articles and certain URLs, you can go track against that and look and say, you know what, there's no way in this certain period of time that people were typing in this URL that has 15 different subdirectories.
because this URL may not have even existed. So
Right.
you're taking that out, that equation, you're taking it apart and be able to see and separating the wheat from the chaff, so to speak.
That's right. And if we know that social didn't touch this URL for a day, for a week, for a month, or maybe even at all, because guess what? There were a lot of URLs that the social team was not promoting at all. And so we're looking at this saying, okay, then who did? How did somebody direct navigate to this URL?
Right.
Maybe it was somebody that found it and shared it, and that's where social gets very where social and sharing gets very muddy. Because social is if it's not on Facebook, but if I go and grab it, and if I put it up there onto Facebook, if I put it into Slack, and
Right.
it starts to pick up a little bit of speed,
Right.
That's where social gets really, really fuzzy. Because again,
I always thought that this was the opportunity for like Twitter to just make buku bucks, and that's basically track a link. Period.
Yep.
Be just track everybody's links, and we would, as a marketer, I would die for that information to be able to see who tweeted it, when they tweeted it, how it took off, how many people ricocheted it, echoed it.
And you get into behavior modification at that point in time where you can actually.
And we'd pay for it.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh, yes, yeah. I would pay for that. And that's a great segue, because when Twitter came back, when Twitter and Google kiss and made up, this was good because we now had another. For breaking news and initial seeding of the link graph, we had another vehicle that was not Facebook, that was behind a wall. We had Twitter back, and Twitter is very instrumental in that sense, and especially because what Google did differently this time is said we're also going to show it in the news module. And if you're in Google News, that's a huge shot in the arm. And I was terrified when this came out, because I thought, all right, before Twitter, probably this was before. I mean, when they were originally indexed, when Twitter was originally indexed, we weren't necessarily paying attention to it and tracking it like this. But now we were.
Right.
And when Google launched that relationship again, we were really happy to see that it was attributed correctly. So if you're on a mobile device and you're searching something and you see a tweet and you click through on that tweet or that link, it's attributed correctly. It's attributed through Twitter. So they did it right. Somebody was paying attention. But historically, they haven't been paying attention. iOS and Android operating systems have been terrible in showing that this was mobile attributed.
Right.
Well, I don't know if you guys remember, but for a good long time, back in 2012-ish, and even into 2013,
Right.
both iOS and Android, there was this whole concept of dark mobile. We talked about it on the Define blog because it blew up on us, and we saw that all of a sudden traffic just stopped coming because it wasn't being attributed to the iOS operating system or through Android. We had no idea where it was coming from because they shut it off. And whenever these updates have happened to operating systems, we've seen very sporadic results. And they seem to have a handle on it now, but when we're talking at the operating system level, that it's dark, that presents a whole different level of problems. Now, again, they seem to have gotten a handle on it. These new releases that have come out from iOS and Android with Marshmallow, one of the first things that we do is we go out there and track just to make sure that if I find a link from via my phone, does it say Android? Does it say Safari? Does it say Google? Or does it say Chrome, mobile browser for Chrome? Does it say these things? And for the most part, they've been consistent. But historically, they have not.
I mean, you literally have to test. There's so many different permutations, and especially just in the Android environment, and they've been sloppy on what they reveal, and that kind of opens up my question here: is that are you seeing kind of the environment of tracking? Are you seeing such sloppiness finally getting refined? Are there people that are finally investing in the improving of tracking, improving of data, so you don't see these dark chasms of, oh, well, we just didn't pay attention to this, and then we'll fix it? I mean, back in 2012, I mean, there was months and months that went by that you could not see the OSs.
That's right.
Now in the space, are you at least seeing maybe a little bit more attention to this detail so we could, I mean, lessons have to be learned, right?
Kind of. Bitly has done a good job of helping with the Facebook links.
Okay.
They've made a concerted effort. Chartbeat has done a very good job, and I think kind of leads the crowd here as far as accuracy and tracking. They do some back end analysis to ensure that when they're sending this information, because they've built a company on this attribution, and so they have got to be as accurate as possible, and they can't let that direct bucket get too big, because then what good is their tool? And so they've kind of led the charge, and those are the two tools that I would say are incredibly, well, they're on the tip, and they've been the ones that have actively been calling this data out,
right,
or at least moving to hopefully disambiguate some of this information.
There's the word for the day. Yeah.
You know, one of the things that we did where we were having problems with this was we reverse kind of engineered. We used like tools like SEMrush, you know, and so we identified what keywords we were ranking on that we didn't even realize,
right,
and then we grouped them. You know, and then we just kind of looked at the trend on a topic, you know, rather than a specific keyword. And it was really enlightening, because it was some of these dark, you know, it was basically people were clicking on that organic search result, coming to our site, but because it was dark, because it was not provided, what we were able to see was, wait a second, we're ranking, you know, number 1 or number 2 on that. Wow, interesting. We got some conversions there. Let's pile up on that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you're also, with your conversation, we really do appreciate the amount of time that we've had with you. Part of your conversation, to extrapolate, is the responsibility of the content marketing and the social marketing team to make sure that there's so much available structure that they make sure that communicating to all the other respective teams, because literally if one hand doesn't know what the other hand's doing, there's no way to be able to extrapolate that data for these purposes, right?
Yes. If your question is, what do we do? Is that basically what you would say?
Well, I was just saying, I think it's upon the different marketing arms of any organization, especially a large organization like the New York Times, that there has to be a
coordination,
right? Coordination and reporting internally that is, bar none, exacting of what timing of what actually happens, so you can use that for your own data purposes, right?
I would say yes, and at the same time, I would say good luck with that. Because interdepartmental communication is one of the hardest things that you can do in a large organization, and getting everybody to work together, to analyze the data, to come up with a methodology that they all agree on, to agree with the results. Yeah, I mean, that's why I say get ready to protect your turf, because again, that could be, you know, the difference between a good job interview, that could be a good job performance review.
Right.
There's a lot of things that are at play there that you have to take into consideration.
So don't let your performance metrics get stolen by another department.
Or be ready to go to the mat for them.
There it is. All right. Well, Marshall, thank you so much for your time today. We want to be respectful of time. For everybody who wants to see the blog, go over to definemg.com/blog. There's a lot of great information there. Follow Marshall. We'll be tweeting you guys out, your company as well as yourself, and tying into all the different points that you made in the podcast. We greatly appreciate your time. Any final words for the good of the cause here?
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the time, everybody, and I appreciate what you guys are doing, and thanks for the opportunity.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much, Marshall. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right. Hey.